while there might be shortcuts there, guys, there's no shortcuts with these defensive tackles. Anyways, though, yeah, first position rankings here for the 2026 NFL Draft. It's always my favorite one to do. It's always the big boys. Not on offense. We'll get to that in a while. The offensive line, you know. But, yeah, first prospect rankings. Let's get this thing going. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the NFL. Please like and subscribe. Hope you guys are ready for free agency. But before we get to that, as I do always, I have a mock draft that does in fact come out again right before free agency, which starts. It's really fast approaching. Under a week until then. Obviously, March Madness is going on pretty soon. Obviously, conference tournaments, all this. A lot of crap happens in March. But right now, as you guys can see, we got the NFL Draft. I've been quickly getting through some of these prospects. But yeah, here's your, again, you guys are all here for the defensive linemen. Again, if I talked about all of them for a long time, it would be a movie. So again, we'll try to get through these guys as quickly as possible. I'll give you guys my rankings. Again, big boards, ranges, sort of like potential and categories. Again, if you look at NFL.com and their scouting profiles, they'll give like a potential role for the player in the NFL. You guys will see that when my big board comes out in April. Sorry, it's just again how I have to do these things. But with that said, we will be looking at 4 honorable mentions right now before I get into, again, my top 12 guys, which, again, we'll go through each player, and then you'll see I'll reveal my actual rankings. But 4 guys that, or no, actually 5 guys, my God, that did not make the cut but are still really solid prospects. First off, we'll start with Grayson Allen, the Oklahoma guy. I watched a crap ton of football out of him. A lot of people are liking what they saw with him at the Combine. That is why he is rising quickly. Problem with me is the tape doesn't really show that. Yes, the production, at least in terms of like certified box score enjoyer numbers, aren't bad. I mean, 5 sacks, 3.5 sacks last 2 years. He was really good last year in terms of, again, production. I'm not going to lie there. But our Mason Thomas was a big reason for that. He is not a good run defender either. That's, I think, the biggest thing here. Also, that's a big theme that I'll definitely I'll talk about throughout this, is that this interior defensive lineman class is not the greatest, to be honest with you guys. There's still some solid prospects, some solid depth, but there's no true like unicorn as a pass rusher. Again, Omar Norton-Lott was kind of that last year, but he still wasn't, again, an overall really well-rounded prospect. There's still some really good prospects, again, at this position draft. Don't get me wrong there, but again, big thing you'll see is there's no real, like, true, like, Jalen Carter, if you wanted that in this draft at this position. There's just not. There's a lot of good options, but there's no, like, unicorns, nothing insane. So, Grayson Allen, while he does provide some pass rush, he's just not a guy that I really look at as a dependable run defender, which kind of keeps him outside of that top 12. But he's still a solid prospect. I like him a lot. But at the same time, I think I'm gonna hold off a little bit on him. Next up, we have Domonique Capart, who is a very interesting prospect out of Clemson. Again, everyone's going to look at Peter Woods. We'll get to him when we get to the actual rankings. But he's a guy that really never put it all together in college. I will say the past really 2 years, he's been very, very solid against the run. But at the same time, he's just not a guy that gets off blocks well enough, in my opinion, or not get off blocks. Doesn't engage really well enough to really see himself as a true starter in the NFL, which is okay. I don't even know if my 12th guy is going to be a starter in the league. But his tape just doesn't show the ability to, again, get off blocks consistently enough for me to really see him as a starter. But overall, he's a dependable player and should, again, like I said, at least be draftable. Next up, we have Chris McLean, who, again, a lot of people, Bro, are you kidding me? No, it's just not right. There we go. Not Jalen McClellan. We'll get to him in a while. But yes, Chris McClellan out of Florida and Missouri, I guess this past 2 years. But yes, Chris McClellan. Some people are like, what the hell are you talking about? Similar to again, Grayson. The thing with Chris is that again, from what I saw on tape with him, his leverage and just the straight up displacement that offensive linemen get against him, especially on double teams, is not really warranted to put him higher. Yes, can he block shit? Yes, does he have a couple good pass rush moves? Yes, I will give you that. Is he probably a top 12 defensive lineman prospect? You can say that, but for me, he's not, again, reliable enough against the run and as consistent enough, I think, as a lot of people might, again, overly admit to him, being as an edge rusher to really think, not as an edge rusher, my bad, as a defensive lineman to think that. Yes, was he a big-time producer last year for Missouri? There's no doubting that. But his pressure, I think, was a little bit inflated with that defense, and just the fact that he's not a guy that, again, at least I see on tape as a true reliable player is why he's here. Again, the inconsistencies are just a little bit too much for me, but again, he's still a solid prospect. Now we got Rashawn It's not Pleasant, right? No, it's Benny. What do we get there? Yeah, Rayshawn Benny. There we go, out of Michigan. He's kind of the last of those Michigan, like, I guess, like, Jim Harbaugh guys. He was awesome, I think, in 2023 when they won the Natty. Again, he had Mason Graham and had Grant there. 2024, I think you could argue he was even better, especially against the run. Last year, though, again, simply put, he just didn't get the pressure you needed him to get. A lot of the bull rushes he had that influenced the pocket really weren't doing a lot for me. That's really what keeps him here. Again, kind of a down senior season kind of really put him here. I thought he was going to be a guy that could have definitely creeped into the top 10, but that doesn't really seem the case. Still a solid player, though, because you're definitely going to get some decent run defense production out of him there. And then you also have Albert Regas, who is definitely one of the more unique guys at this position in the draft. Biggest thing with him at A&M was the fact that he consistently won via his speed rush, which I think for an interior guy is very rare. At the end of the day, guys, he's a guy that will produce for you in the NFL. It's just how will he be able to do it in a hyper-specific defense? Because at the end of the day, I think he's really just a guy you'll get a lot of 2-eye, 2-tech scenarios out of, and he doesn't handle double teams particularly well, which I think is really the biggest separator between him and, again, the rest of these top 12. The fact that all those guys, at least to a decent extent, to a certain extent, are able to, again, handle double teams well. So that's why Albert Regas is here. But tape-wise, didn't look too bad. It's just that thing kind of, again, kept me out from him. But still, again, very unique prospect. I like him a lot. With that, let's get into our top 12.
The interception takeaway is such a big part of this program. And they got nearly another here. Fumble to the 1-yard line. Tim Keenan pried it free.
And the first guy we'll be talking about today is Tim Keenan, the Alabama defensive lineman. He will be making it into the top 12 of my rankings. Before we actually look at his overall grades that I gave him in my scouting profile for him, look at his seasons here. He didn't play at all as a freshman, as you might have expected. Nick Saban was still around there. 2023, he played, actually, honestly, maybe his best season overall in terms of, like, consistent level play. He made a lot of good decisions that year. In terms of his just overall reaction. 2024 definitely his most productive year. I mean, I just don't even really need to say much there. And then 2025 last season, still put some decent stuff on tape, just really overall wasn't exactly their go-to guy on the interior as you might have expected with another guy in a little bit. But still, as a true run stuffer, he wasn't, again, the worst. But still, definitely not the senior season he was looking at. If we look at specific games with him, biggest thing I liked from him was the fact that in that Oklahoma game, again, he didn't get a lot of snaps, but he did a really good job at again, creating displacement. Really hard on those Oklahoma guards who can really do much of anything, especially there in that second half. Again, he didn't have a very good game in the game against Indiana. I'm not going to even lie to you guys there. Other games he played well in, I think the LSU game was kind of decent. Again, his most productive game of the season was without a doubt against South Carolina. He had like two or three pressures in that game. But yeah, that LSU game, he did a really good job at making, again, who was the running back? I forgot. It was the LSU's backup. He really just got completely just knocked out of his game because it was one critical play where he just completely blew up that one. But that's really what I have on that. Now actually getting into what Tim Keenan is as a player. Again, if you wanted to know, guys, every single prospect rankings, I have certain traits that I have for every single guy. Again, some of them, again, it's very fluid. And again, these also again with when we get to again the big board and like what I get for each one. Again, there's some things like average backup, like the roles I think they'll be in the NFL. Those are very fluid. So when we look at the rating at the end, again, there's like a certain range I guess I put for it. But if a guy is like, I don't know, 73 and I put him in like should be a really good starter, that's like, again, it's a fluid ranking. It does, again, the range it's not fixed. Like I can put it in different things just so you guys want to know for the future on that. And also though, the traits, again, I have each one, different players, different again things though. Again, if a guy's not really going to be much of a pass rusher in the league, I don't think his freaking toolbox will really move them. Be that much of, again, a big thing. But anyway, for Tim Keenan, first thing we'll talk about is his strength. Overall raw strength, he's a pretty strong dude. I don't think it'll be much of an issue in the league. 75. Beefiness, he's a bigger, again, stockier guy overall for a defensive tackle. Again, that's relative to the position. But, yeah, he's got really good beefiness, I guess. Explosion, he gets off the line really well. And there's definitely some, again, weird bursts he has. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's kind of fun to watch on tape because when you see it, again, you just have to see it. Handwork quickness, overall pretty decent. He does, again, make it a pretty big part of his game at times, but overall, not the most consistent thing. Handwork fluidness, definitely a 71. He tries, again, his top move is that bull rip. And that usually does serve him well with this. But again, when his handwork isn't, again, outside of that, it's just there's not really much there. Handwork effectiveness 55. He doesn't have the, again, biggest arms, so it's really hard for him at times to, again, that's why he didn't play a lot on third down this past season. It's really hard for him to counter, and that's just, again, really limits his pass rush upside. Run defense resistance 90. He's got really, really strong lower half. It's very, very hard to move him in the run game. For that reason, I'm going to give him a 90. You have 79 on the speed. He's pretty quick overall in terms of play speed. Technique versatility, really, it's not that great. You're going to probably put him like a 2 if I had to guess. Again, he's out there not to get moved. Relentlessness, not that much. Again, when you look at him as a pass rusher, even as a run defender, if he doesn't win off the snap, he's not really going to be doing a lot for you. But at the same time, he usually does win, so you're just going to have to deal with that. His bull rush is an 85. It's his #1 move, really his only true move. And he does do a decent job at influencing the pocket with it when, again, he gets on the field for that. Finesse rush, I think he has some sort of cross-chop club sort of thing he does at times, but that's really, again, once in a while. It didn't actually look too bad when I saw it on tape, so I'm going to put it there at 72. His speed rush, it's there once in a while. I don't have really too many issues with it. Again, he's a freaking defensive tackle, guys, or nose tackle, what are we going to expect there? Improvisation, that, again, kind of goes along with relentlessness. Because of the fact that he doesn't really have much of a plan at times, it's kind of hard for him to, consistently, again, win. His tackling is a little bit spotty, especially these arm tackles. Again, talk about NFL defensive linemen. It is critical that their arm tackling is solid. So, again, these runners just don't break off every single play. That's something he definitely get better at. His block shedding is an 83. He gets off blocks pretty well. Again, he can, discard guys pretty easily at times, too. His move to blocks, the reason that it's here for him is he's a guy that, again, you want, again, in terms of a quality player, not quality player, Tim, but, again, in terms of his ceiling, and you want him to add Tim Keenan in there on third down, his move toolbox needs to get substantially better for this to be any higher. Again, that's really the reason that it's here. Again, obviously the average will be a lot higher. But that's the reason, again, this is kind of a low grade. He has literally no move toolbox, and it will be an important part of his game. Again, it depends on the player. For him, it's going to be important. 72 on the potential overall. I think he can definitely turn into, a reliable player, maybe an average starter, but that's where it sits there. Overall, 70.9. Not too bad for him. Again, Devon Godchaux's my comparison for him. Devon Godchaux's a reliable guy in the league. He's not really, again, anything special, but still a solid player. That's my Keenan comp there. That's what I got on him. We'll see him at the end and see where he ranks, but now let's get to our next guy.
I want scouts to see my versatility, just being overall a dominant player in the run game and in the passing game. I feel like I've shown on film how.
And the second defensive tackle we'll be talking about today is Cameron Ball, the Arkansasman. He was 6'5", 310. He's a pretty big dude. That'll definitely be something to watch out in the league. And if you saw him at the combine, that was definitely something to see. But for Cameron Ball, again, he played for an Arkansas team that relatively was never successful there. A lot of the, really his biggest falterings really weren't mostly weren't his fault. Again, the 2024 defense, at least there was some respect there in terms of that secondary. But like last year, guys, they had the worst secondary in the SEC. They had the worst team in the SEC. A lot of his performances were kind of limited by the fact that when he was on the field, it was either, again, a critical situation where he may or may not have made the play, or again, if the team wasn't running the ball up on them, again, they were just throwing the ball. Again, it wasn't garbage time. He really wasn't put in a competitive spot there. But at the same time, again, in terms of his actual, we're going to see him a lot. His run defense as a senior was definitely a lot more sound than I honestly expected going on the tape. But at the same time, again, still an Arkansas defense that would have been substantially worse without him out there. But at the same time, for Cameron Ball last season, a lot of his good play really honestly came earlier in the season. That game against LSU, I think he played pretty well. But really, other than that, it was a lot of empty calorie production, especially against Tennessee. Again, he only had one tackle, I understand that. But in terms of like actual impact, I think he might have had 2 or 3 pressures. Those were, again, not really the greatest things. But still, again, he didn't really play a lot in that Notre Dame game, and those numbers came late too. So, again, a lot of these just weren't competitive games. A lot of his tape I kind of discarded in a lot of ways. The big critical downs I obviously kept, but most of it was kind of like, yeah, but who really cares? Again, it was a little bit of waste of time there. Anyways, though, get into Cameron Ball and him as a player. He's just a really strong dude, guys. He's going to be a run-stuffing nose tackle at the end of the day. I gave him an 87 for strength. He's just a guy, again, it's very hard to move. He's just a big guy in general, so that's why he's going to get an 88 there. Peeviness is something you can't really control, but again, when you're good, you're going to be there. He lacks a lot of explosion. That's really the most notable thing I can say about him. Again, he's not going to be a guy winning off of speed on the interior. His handwork quickness is bad. His handwork fluidness is also pretty bad. But again, for this type of guy, you don't really need him to be a guy, again, winning laterally very consistently. Handwork effectiveness is a 73, though, because like I said, his really primary move is some sort of rip, maybe even a swipe of sorts, so I guess that is kind of lateral. But those two things he does work well with, so I think I'm going to give him, again, that's where I kind of saw some effectiveness there. Overall, kind of just average, though. Resistance against the run, 89. You're not going to move him on double teams. It's, again, one of the harder things to do. Again, for any player, again, for any offensive lineman in this draft. Speed, he's not a fast dude. His technique versatility is very limited. He's going to be a 1-tech if I had to guess. His relentlessness, I'll give a 78. He really doesn't give up on many plays when he's out there. Again, he's usually pretty energized, though. Bull rush, 84. Again, he doesn't have much of any of this, guys. He's just not going to be a pass rushing guy. Again, I guess he can influence the pocket a little bit. But that's really all I have on him there. He does tackle pretty well for a defensive tackle, too. Again, not really too much else there. His block shedding, I think, is decent. It's just the fact, again, when he moves laterally, it's just kind of a very limited thing there. And honestly, guys, I just don't see this guy with the highest potential. Again, that's really kind of what caps him out here in terms of some of these other guys, and as well as kind of like really a role in the NFL. But again, he knows what he is. He's a very decent, solid prospect, guys. Again, his overall thing ironed out to a 71.7 or 8, 71.8 maybe. Like John Jenkins, for my comparison, John Jenkins served a very, still honestly in the league right now, very solid nose tackle in the NFL. I don't know if he'll have the same effectiveness against the run, that being for Cameron Ball, but in terms of, again, like a backup to, average nose tackle in the NFL, I think he could definitely be that. And our third guy is the mostly highly touted Christen Miller out of Georgia. He's a guy that I think has definitely received some undeserved criticism from people that don't watch his tape enough. He was definitely a guy, I'm not going to lie, with those, again, past really solid defensive tackle prospects past couple years at Georgia, or just edge rushers. I'm really just looking at Nolan Smith guys in 2023. But, yes, I think there were definitely some frustrations with him maybe not being the best of edge rusher, again, of an edge rusher prospect, especially in 2020, or not edge rusher, really pass rush production. Again, considering a guy like Jalen Walker was really just there back in 2024. But I think some of that criticism is a little bit, again, overblown just because of the fact that we know what he is going to be in the league. He's going to be a guy that's going to be stiff. It's going to be ugly to watch him try to rush the passer, but as a true run defender, guys, he's going to be one of the more solid guys in the league because of his understanding of leverage and his really rarely misplaced, again, hands. He does a really good job at, again, engaging well enough to the point where it's going to be hard for him to be kind of maneuvered in a way that'll be easier for a quarterback in the pocket. He will affect the quarterback's platform very consistently, which I think is an underrated part of him as a pass rusher. Guys, encompassing this draft class, again, defensive lineman class overall, there's very few guys that are consistently going to be able to win with speed or any sort of technique. Again, in terms of a pass rush here. So, again, we look at the angle like that, especially for a guy like Christen Miller, it's more of affecting the quarterback's platform and really the pocket as a whole, for, again, with him as pass rusher. He's a run defender, I already talked about it. Again, he's going to be hard to be, again, not as hard as a guy like Cameron Ball, but still going to be hard to displace. For Christen Miller, though, last season, really notable games I saw, he did do a really good job against Tennessee, not with getting pressure. I don't even think he got... I couldn't even register a pressure for him, to be honest, in this game, guys. But as a run defender, really stabilizing what they needed to, especially in that overtime. Again, it was really a lot of him just basically making it hard for the offensive lineman to really create much of a pocket for Joey Aguilar, which, again, was really important. Alabama game, he didn't play well, I'm not going to lie to you guys. LSU game, not LSU game, freaking Ole Miss game against Trinidad Chambliss. That was probably Trinidad's one of his harder games to really consistently get through his reads. I think that was part of because Christen Miller actually was winning with some of those better sheds of sorts. I don't even know how to describe it, but again, his moves worked. Texas game, he dominated, I'm not going to lie. He had, I think 4 stops, again, of sorts against the run. Really just assists, but yeah, he played pretty well in that one too. And then the quarterfinal, I guess he was okay. But yeah, a lot of his games were kind of quiet, but at the same time, he, again, was, again, effective in that way too. Anyways, though, for Christen Miller, and we look at his rankings, he's a pretty well-rounded player overall for me, but again, he definitely is a flawed player at the same time. His strength, I'm giving him a 77. It's definitely a playable, again, aspect of his game, but it's nothing special. He is pretty beefy overall. I mean, you look at his makeup, he comes out at, I don't even know, where does he come out at? I'll just say what do we say here? 6'4", 305. He's solid, guys. Explosion, 80. It's really just above average is probably the best way I can put it. Again, if I compare it with a guy like, I don't know, we'll say Ndame Matabike, there's definitely a stark difference between those two. But then you put him against, I don't know, freaking Snacks Harrison, there's definitely a stark difference in his favor there. Handwork quickness is 52. He does not move his hands quickly. It's a lot more methodical, but for his game, it works. Handwork fluidness is 77. Again, kind of the trade-off there. You want to be more fluid, you can't be as fast with a guy like him. Effectiveness knows an 84. I do think he has sudden and violent hands at times. That's part of the reason he kind of has a little bit more of a diverse pass rush skill set than some of these other guys. Still nothing special by any means, but he is pretty effective with his hands. Run defense, resistance, definitely a 94. Again, he's just going to he's going to make plays against the run. That's really what this thing is here. Again, it's going to be hard to not see him. Again, you got to plan for him when he's on the field in terms of run game there. His speed, 77. He plays pretty decently fast there. Technique versatility, really 75. You probably put him at 2 eye, maybe a 3 tech at times, but really definitely think kick out off of the really just the center at that point, because I think he's more valuable there again in terms of your run defense. Relentlessness, 66. Again, he wins a lot, but when he doesn't win, there are definitely some issues, I'd say. It's not that he just doesn't become as effective as I think he could be. Definitely just something to work on there. Again, definitely see this going up in the league. Bull rush, 89. It's just really one move. He does have I guess he has a finesse move. It's kind of like a cross chop of sorts, but it really hasn't been, again, fully taken out of, the learning stage yet, so that's where I'll put it. He doesn't have a speed rush. His improvisation is terrible because he has one move, and talk about a guy who just doesn't have counters. It is him, and for a guy that I think at some point in his career would like to be, again, a third down guy at times, that is going to have to improve immensely. I don't really ever see him being a guy getting out of the bad, but at least if I can knock it up, I don't know, 10 or 20 points, that would definitely help for him. Tackling, I'm going to say a 76. He makes his tackles. Block shedding, 82. He gets off guys pretty easily. Again, move 2 blocks really just doesn't apply to what he's going to be able being in the league. I'm going to give him a 79. I really like his, capabilities of kind of a versatile run defender and really be a guy that can send your defense around in that mindset at times in his career. I don't think he'll ever be, a true main guy like that. Maybe a second guy would be pretty good. And then you look at a guy, his block shedding is also really nice, so that's what I see there. Overall, rounds into a 73.1. Sebastian Joseph's days, my comparison. He never was a guy that, I'd say he was a true central part of a run defense. But if you have a solid linebacker behind him, that could be a really good tandem in the league. Definitely someone to watch out for him there, because he definitely has a pretty, desirable skill set out of most of these guys for defensive tackle in this year's draft.
Often, there's Oakley in motion. It's a handoff for Jackson. And he is wrangled almost immediately by Lee Hunter. It's a loss of...
And up next is Lee Hunter, the Texas Tech defensive tackle. He is a big boy. I will say he's a little undersized at 6'4", but the 321, I'm joking, makes up for it. Yeah, he's arguably the biggest defensive tackle in this class, pound for pound. With that said, looking at his production, overall, really solid numbers. Again, his last year Texas Tech was by far his best season overall, especially on tape. He was dominant in that Big 12 conference. All 9 conference games, he completely dominated. We'll get that into a little bit. But he was, again, at UCF the previous 3 years as a freshman. He played... actually a decent amount. The numbers don't really say that, but trust me, he played a decent amount. 2023 overall, from what I saw on tape, probably his best season in terms of pass rush production. If I'm not mistaken, I charted at least 15 pressures, which for his position in that conference, not that pretty damn good. Also, he was definitely a guy that, again, wanted with a little bit more speed than you might have expected. Especially for a guy you see the past years, that hasn't really been a big part of his game. 2024 last year with UCF, kind of a breakout year in a lot of ways, again, overall in terms of, the recognition from the country. But again, last season, Texas Tech, again, he was one of the better defensive tackles, not only in the, Big 12, but in the entire country in a lot of ways with what he was able to do. Just completely dominating up front, really just against the run. Again, looking at his conference game schedule here, this is really where he played well. I will say, again, in the Oregon game, he played, pretty damn well, especially in those shotgun looks where Dante Moore was hitting the ball off a crap ton. Did a really good job in that mindset, and that, passed into this, but again, Big 12 championship, up until this, really, I'd say probably the Houston game. Utah, he wasn't awesome, but every other game, he, Arizona State game, even he probably, honestly, maybe his pass rusher his best game. But yeah, a lot of good things throughout this, conference slate. Again, really just straight up domination up front. It was very, very hard for teams to even double team him without him still affecting the play. And again, it just speaks to how dominant he was, as a player. And again, really what he could, I wouldn't maybe say be in the NFL, but again, there's at least a potential for that. And with that said, looking into his grade, where he grades out here, his strength's an 83. I think his size speaks more to what he actually is than I think his actual raw strength. He's obviously still a really strong dude because, again, he's so big, but I think it's more of the size than anything. BVness at 81. You might ask, why is he not higher here? Again, I really think this speaks to the fact he doesn't play as beefy as you might think he does, but obviously there. I'm going to give him 91 on explosion. For a guy this size, he should not be able to do what he's able to do. Again, the comment might not say that, but the RAS definitely does. Very sneaky, athletic for his position. Don't want to try to phrase that anything else there. But yeah, he's very explosive, guys. On tape, it's very, obviously, off the line of scrimmage, even if you're a freaking CBSE or you don't even watch football, you'll see, that guy's pretty, explosive off the line there. So that's what I'll say there. And that kind of, very weird dynamic there. Handwork quickness is 60. He's not a guy that, in terms of, we're talking about, shredding through an offensive lineman. That's not what he's going to do. Handwork fluidness, not great either. Effectiveness, also not awesome. This is kind of where I sat on it. I think his handwork effectiveness is definitely a little bit better. Run defense resistance, honestly, guys, not as great as you might think it was. I think the fact that he was still able to neutralize pretty well was, I think, what allowed a guy like Jacob Rodriguez to make all those tackles. So, yeah, while he was dominant in a lot of ways, it really wasn't just because of the fact that he was, a great, really just, making it really hard for teams to run the ball. Speed, 77, he plays pretty fast, nothing insane though. Technique, versatility, I think there's definitely some places you could put him. I really think from the 1 tech to the 3 tech, even you can definitely be fine with him. As a true 0 tech, it would definitely be a little bit interesting to see how that develops, but outside shoulder, he's not as great on, but again, we'll see how those odd and even techniques really work out for him in the league. Relentlessness, 78, overall, pretty solid motor. I don't have anything else to comment on there. His bull rush is his go-to thing. That is what will be his breadwinner in the NFL. He doesn't have any finesse move that I could really chart. His speed rush is also a little bit lacking. It's not, again, it really affected he isn't explosive. It's the fact that he doesn't really have any sort of, I want to say edge rusher trait, but that's kind of how I have to say it to really, again, enhance that move. Improvisation, I'm going to go 44. I don't know why it's here, but again, we'll stick with it, I guess, here. The reason it's a 44 is because there's definitely something there. It's just, it's so, like, inconsistent. In some situations it puts him even more trouble, especially if we're talking about, again, defending the run in some critical situations. Again, at the point of attack, sometimes he tries to do things that, again, just aren't going to work. So it's more of a risk-taking ability that I think he needs to develop than anything. Tackling, 93. This is, again, we just talk about him overall. Again, he doesn't really, again, in terms of, like, actually, like, in terms of penetration of an offensive lineman, he's, again, not really anything more than average. But the fact that he is able to bring guys down consistently, get arm tackles, and get off blocks is really where he's at. He's not a guy that you really look at as a guy that's going to consistently dominate the line of scrimmage. It's more of him being able to get off blocks and make tackles. That's where he's going to be successful. Move toolbox, 53. He does have something that's, again, I honestly, guys, I think the biggest thing in terms of a potential here is that, again, these guys that have shown something, I think, are a little bit more promising in some ways than other guys that might not have that in their arsenal, like, and you won't expect them to because that's not who they are. But his move toolbox, there's definitely something there. Again, like I said, his speed rush, there's 2 really variations he's working on. Like I said, he's trying to be a little more, again, try to be a little bit better with improvisation, but there is at least something in his arsenal, which I think is better than some other guys. Nothing really too specific, though. Potential, I'm giving him an 83. I really like his makeup of his game just because he's a guy that, again, obviously you need another defensive tackle or really just a nose tackle out there that's going to be able to, consistently, again, establish the line of scrimmage there on, again, the defensive side of the ball. But other than that, guys, at the end of the day, you need guys that are going to make tackles up front. He's a guy that will be able to do that for you. And obviously, again, I like the makeup of him as a player. That's why he comes out to a 74.1. Nothing insane for a grade, but definitely a guy you want to look out for. Dalvin Tomlinson was my comparison. Again, Bleacher Report had the same one. I got to give them their credit there. They do most of these. But Dalvin Tomlinson, again, he's a guy you look at. Not really a guy who dominates the line of scrimmage particularly well. So, again, you look at very similar in that facet. Also, again, you look at the fact that they're both explosive. That's where I see the big, again, comparison. And up next is Darrell Jackson Jr. out of Florida State. He is a guy that we have seen some very, very good football with. Obviously, he has had some injury struggles throughout his career, really just that 2023 season, which we'll get into. But, again, he's comes at 6'6", 274, very rare body type. He's definitely a lighter guy that's going to provide a little bit more pass rush upside out of again, a pretty weak class in that regard, but still, he's nothing like, again, insane, but there's definitely something there. His best season, in my opinion, was 22 at Miami. Again, he transferred from 2020 to Florida, where he really, Maryland, where he really never got an actual pass rushing snap, and they honestly misused him. Kind of speaks to what Maryland's defense has really been like, really for the past decade in the Big Ten. 2022, though, his best season, in my opinion, again, as a run stuffer, he definitely was a little bit more spotty, but I think he averaged actually a pressure and a half per game, which for, again, a guy who's definitely considering a raw guy coming out of high school, was definitely a very enticing thing to see. 2023 at Florida State, he got injured. I forgot exactly what the injury was, but it ended his season prematurely. Again, he bounced back though. 2024 probably his most productive year overall. Again, against the run, he was very, very consistent. This past season, I will say, in terms of the actual volume numbers, were pretty damn good. But he also got on the field a lot more on I wouldn't say empty calorie downs, but in a little bit more of, again, a third down role, which I liked a lot. But at the same time, with Darrell Jackson, you're looking at him to kind of be a little bit more of a two-way player. Again, if we're talking about run defense to pass rush, which again I think is something that definitely separates him from some of these other guys. At the same time, there are definitely some leverage issues that I think hurt him last year in terms of his overall, honestly, production, because I think he could have had a better year than 2024, but realistically, didn't completely happen there. Darrell Jackson, though, looking at his game tape, and nothing really stands out for me huge here. Again, obviously the game against Bama, he didn't play a ton, but when he did play, he played really well. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Again, these two games didn't really matter. That Virginia game, he did not play awesome. A lot of his tackles came off of a assignment, I guess is the best put it. It was, again, that game, their defense as a whole was just disastrous. He played really well against Miami, though. I think that was probably his best game in the entire season, honestly. Pitt game, he played pretty well, too. Stanford game, he was pretty bad. Then he had a really good 4-game stretch until that Florida game where, honestly, guys, he was really the only one making tackles, but at the same time, he was getting moved pretty consistently up front. But yeah, this 4-game stretch, really nothing to complain about. I think in terms of actual mistake-worthy plays, there might have been 3 of them, and he actually dictated the line of scrimmage pretty well in that one, especially with his bull rip move, which he really developed well throughout the season and honestly throughout his collegiate career. Now for Darrell Jackson, looking at his grades, he is a strong guy, guys. That's the first thing I gotta say. The reason I really try to note out here the games that he got moved up front is because it's a very rare thing to see with him. He's just a guy that's very, very hard to deal with in that mindset. And now where I say, again, you might ask, how is he 274 and I'm giving him 95 on beefiness and special, guys? Again, the thing about him is, again, this beefiness trait, I think a lot of people get wrong. Most of it is the fact, again, how freaking big you are, because, again, most of that is the case. But he's a guy, despite being 6'6", has one of the stronger, again, lower halves I've ever even seen out of a defensive lineman, at least in my, again, past couple years evaluating here. So that's why I'm saying it's a special part of his game, because despite him not exactly being a beefy player, that lower half makes, again, it has to be a priority for an offensive lineman to win, again, in terms of getting penetration there. Explosion, 73, again, it's a limiting factor of his game. It's not, again, the end of the world, though. Again, he still works around it. So, 73. He doesn't have any sort of quickness or fluidness. That's just not a part of what he's doing. He really never attacks laterally, and I don't think he'll ever need to in the league either. Effectiveness will give a 78. He has somewhat violent hands overall. And again, he's a guy that definitely stresses being able to, again, beat you off of a second step or sort of thing to kind of get the advantage there. Run defense resistance, 85. Like I said, it is definitely, again, something to note when he, again, has consistent play over a game where he doesn't, again, winning consistently in terms of the line of scrimmage. Speed, 78. Again, very similar to Lee Hunter in that mindset. He doesn't, again, plays pretty fast. Technique versatility, 84. You can really place him, honestly, all the way up to 4i if you want to. You couldn't have the comfortability with that because despite not playing laterally, he does a really good job at closing out multiple holes, which I think in terms of a run defense and multiplicity of a defense, that is huge for him. Relentlessness, again, I put in below average because that's really what it screams for me, but it's really not that bad at all. He has a decent motor, but it's nothing, again, really that special. He does have 3 moves. His bull rip is, I guess, kind of his finesse rush, but again, he has a straight up bull rush, but that's really nothing to talk about. His bull rip, I think, is probably his best move that he'll really work on, but it kind of does prioritize the fact that he does win off the line, where I think it's just normal speed rush is definitely going to be talked about. Improvisation 18, when he doesn't win, that's a big issue with him. That's just got to change there, but when he doesn't win, he is basically a useless pass rusher at that point. He doesn't even influence the pocket. Tackling, 75, nothing really to talk about there. Move toolbox, block shedding. Again, here and there, he doesn't really do a good job getting off blocks, but other than that, not really that big of a deal. Again, he does a really good job at, again, disengaging pretty quickly, but at the same time, it's something really that, again, notable to talk about. Move toolbox doesn't have one. Another big part of his game. I think those go hand in hand there with him. Again, that's got to get better. And his potential, I'll say, is a 77 for a guy that has some pass rush upside. I just need to be able to see him, again, develop some of these more, again, I would say, again, non-essential characteristics to really become an actual guy you could see, be in there. Because that's where, again, his potential comes from. Because as a run defender, there's definitely some concerns. But 71.4 overall, I got Raekwon Davis comparison, who's a guy I think is a sneaky pass rusher in the league. But again, at the same time, you look at him with Miami, he was more of a run defender. So we'll see what happens with Darrell Jackson, but he's definitely a unique prospect in this, again, group.
It's happening quickly. It's an enormous play. Cash Jones is going to be hit behind the line. L.T. Overton.
Next on tap is the Alabama hybrid defensive lineman, L.T. Overton. Again, I know it says Lebius, but his name is L.T., bro. He transferred over from A&M after 2 pretty frustrating years. He was very, very woeful against the run those 2 years. That's part of the reason A&M didn't really play him as much as they sophomore, but at the same time, that was a pretty good defensive line if you don't remember that. But anyways, 2024, first year at Alabama, probably a more productive year if we're talking about overall consistency. But 2025, pass rush-wise, was definitely a little bit more productive in terms of the volume, on top of the fact that I think his pressure rate did take an uptick. Or you saw an uptick in his pressure rate there, especially on third down. He was a guy that used a lot to kind of confuse people. Obviously, he's not, again, an elite prospect by any means, but in terms of his actual coming out of the draft, there's definitely a lot of interesting things to talk about with. Most notably, as a run defender, he is exceptionally flawed when you put him in the wrong spot against the wrong guy, which I think is something that kind of limits his overall again, attractiveness to some NFL teams, but at the same time, there's a lot of good things you see with him, really just off the bat. He's got probably the best pass rush upside of any other guy we're going to talk about today, outside of maybe Peter Woods, and again, we could talk about Banks a little bit too, or Caleb Banks, but But he's probably your most surefire guy, again, as pass rush and defensive tackle. But at the same time, his run defense issues and overall still not being a great pass rusher in the first place is going to hurt his overall, again, draft stock there. But at the same time, very interesting prospect. Last year, he really didn't have, a game that I really want to talk about too notably in terms of him, like, playing exceptionally woeful. He did have himself a game against FSU. A lot of his issues were the fact that he couldn't contain, because he actually had a decent amount of edge rush in this game. He's a guy that was very versatile last year for them, whether for good or for bad, I couldn't tell you, but still. The Wisconsin game, I think he had 8 pressures, something ridiculous like that he dominated in that one in that first half. Georgia game played really well. Vanderbilt game didn't really have to do a lot, and even then he didn't really do a lot against those tackles. Again, the Missouri game, this was really his first true game. They put him on the 3 tech, and he did a very solid job. Against the run, probably not so much, but who really cared in that one? They won anyway. Other than that, really not. Again, he kind of fell off a little bit. Probably the best way we can put it. I think he only had like 6 combined pressures between the South Carolina through the Auburn game, and even in the Auburn game, he should have played a lot better than he did. And then he was non-existent in that Indiana game in his return from that injury. Again, I know it says 7 tackles, but that was an absolute arse whooping, and he the tackles he did make were either cleanup tackles or garbage time. So not really much else to talk about with him in terms of his season. But again, still some very encouraging things overall, though. We look at it, his makeup as a prospect, though. His strength is very, very lacking at this position. Again, he gets pushed around the run game pretty consistently, and that's just something that, again, you can't really have for a true defensive tackle. But the fact that he's versatile and shows some more unique things here, I think is what helps him out a lot. He's not a beefy guy. You look at him at, again, I don't think it says here. What we got here? At 6'5", 278. Again, we look at, what's his name? Oh, it's Darrell Jackson, there we go, as a 6'6", 274. But again, he plays much stronger lower half than LT Overton. But I think the fact that LT sometimes, again, isn't exactly the most coordinated hurts him too. Explosion. Honestly, guys, he gets off the line slow. That first step, again, for a guy you might even see as an edge rusher, the reason he isn't an edge rusher, very similar to what we saw with Darius Robertson, who was a first round, disappointing so far with the Cardinals' first round pick there back in 2023, is the fact that he didn't have, again, an explosive enough first step, and that's something we do see in LT Overton pretty consistently. So it's a little bit of a concern there. Handwork quickness and handwork fluidness go right hand in hand. He's pretty refined there. I think that's one of the better parts of his game. Again, just overall, he's got 2 moves in that cross chop and honestly club like drop. It's kind of a weird move, but both those moves are very fluid, and I like the way he uses them. And even when he's not going in like with a true plan, he still is able to, kind of figure it out pretty well, because again, muscle memory and stuff with that. Handwork effectiveness 76. Overall, kind of just an above average guy in that sense, pretty solid, honestly, guys. Again, his moves, impact the tackle pretty well, or the guard, depending on the play. Run defense resistance 69. Honestly, it's not as bad as I think, again, really the strength might entail there, just because of the fact that, honestly, guys, he doesn't really put himself in, or the team doesn't even put him in bad enough situation from that really get exposed there. But in the NFL, again, if a defensive coordinator has to put him somewhere, again, it could definitely hurt him for sure. The projectability, that isn't great, but again, what I saw on tape, I gotta ignore it. He wasn't that awful. Speed 84, probably one of the faster guys in this draft in terms of play speed. Give him his props there. Technical versatility 85. The reason I say that is there's really no true spot for him, but at the same time, there's a lot of different situations you can put him in a lot of different spots, which I think overall does speak to really good versatility, despite not really having, again, a true 3 tech position, which I think is where you would want him to be. But again, you can't really do that because of the fact, like I said, the run defense exposure would be pretty bad. Relentlessness, he's got a really good motor. Part of the reason he gets a lot of pressure is because of the fact that he doesn't win on the first move, and he does a really good job off of that. He is probably the best bull rush, honestly, in this entire draft, outside of a couple guys we'll get to, probably, honestly, Dave Bailey. But yeah, his bull rush is special. It wins very, very consistently. I think the fact that he might not be as dominant as some people would like, and he might not have anything off of it, but the bull rush itself is going to win very consistently, and even in the NFL, I think that'll be a move for him that will keep him around on teams and will get him consistent pressure. Finesse rush, not really much to talk about there. It's kind of just, like I said, the club move. His speed rush, like I said, he doesn't get off the line quick enough, but at the same time, he is able to get, he is decent enough bend to kind of work around with that. Improvisation, like I said, the bull rush is what he goes off of. There's not really a true plan like that, so that's why I put that there. Again, if he doesn't win with it, which is very rare, he, again, like I said, is going to get shut down. Doesn't have a move toolbox. He usually uses 1 move, maybe has 2. But again, there's just really no variance there. And there's, again, like I said, when there's no variance, again, it's kind of hard to be super productive. Tackling's okay. Block shitting, again, it speaks to that run defense there. And also, I think his potential is an 82 because, again, there's definitely some enticing things with him as a pass rusher. Zach Harrison, by comparison to the Atlanta dude, he's been a pretty solid guy in the league so far. Definitely his struggles overall, though, in consistency, which I could definitely see LT Overton, again, confronting pretty early in his career. But 74.3 overall, great for LT. We'll see what the actual overall, again, range of that comes out to when we get to the big board, or honestly when I reveal that to you guys later. But yeah, that's our LT Overton thing.
It's in motion. Blitz coming. Dart avoids a sack. Shakes another off. Down.
Our next guy up is the highly touted Caleb Banks out of Florida. He is a rare 6'7", 265, an absolute freak in that mindset. One of the rarer bodies we've ever rarer statures we've ever seen at this position in the NFL draft. But he is a guy that has had some big-time seasons there at Florida. He didn't really play at all, considering the fact he came into the college football as a very raw prospect. Or not even high school, just a really raw player. Again, he obviously struggled with injury 2021, 2022 with Louisville. Transferred over to Florida, had a really good 2023. 2024 was his breakout year. A lot of people loved what they saw. Still a really raw player, though. And then last year, he was limited. I think it was like an ankle injury or something. It wasn't anything good. That limited to the last 2 games of the season where he really played sparingly. But again, I kind of ignored his tape this year. I watched a little bit of that Tennessee game, Florida game. I kind of just honestly ignored, guys, because that game wasn't even competitive in the first place. 2024 is really where his tape stands. And we look at that. You saw a guy with really good to even elite strength in a lot of ways. I just threw it a strong 90. It's very rare to see a guy at this stature consistently dominate the way he did. So the fact that, again, he was able to just, again, out-muscle guys in a lot of ways kind of just speaks to the guy he is. BVness 87. Again, the 265 is a little bit bizarre, but he still got that plays, again, to a pretty strong stature. Explosion 88. Again, rare explosion in that again, idea there, because again, guy who's 6'7" shouldn't be able to get off the line that well, and he does. So yeah, handwork quickness, handwork fluidness, very weird way of him attacking there. But I really think the fact that he's able to kind of refine some of the things that you might not expect a guy of his like development. Again, it's very impressive there. But I liked what I saw. Again, that was really where the Tennessee game kind of came in. Handwork effectiveness 84. Even when he's not fluid, which I think is probably the one inconsistent thing, and I think he's really just targeted on offside here from what I saw. But his effectiveness, again, it's going to be very hard as a guard not to really get your hands put in either in your grill, or you're going to either have to just be really good. That's kind of how I see that going. Run defense resistance 77. I don't really have too much to talk about there. He's decent enough against the run. Yeah. Speed 89. He plays very fast. His technique versatility is 97. You can place him anywhere, honestly, until the 6 tech. He's special in terms of where you can put him. Honestly, I wouldn't want to put him. You probably want to keep him in the interior, but with his size and his ability in terms of explosiveness, there's not many other guys you're going to see with again his idea there. And also his relentlessness is off the charts. He simply put does not give up on a play, and he's going to pursue you until you get out of bounds. It's just who he is. Bull rush 88. It's his best pass rush move. It's really his only move I really have to speak of here. Finesse rush, speed rush, not really part of his game. He's going to bull rush and figure it out after that. Improvisation 43. Again, it's very limited. It's not the end of the world though. Tackling. Again, this is kind of where we talk about him as a raw prospect. His tackling form is definitely effed up. Is probably the best way to put it. But again, he's still not brutally bad at tackling. At least now. We'll see what happens in the NFL. Block shedding 75. He gets off blocks decent enough. Like I said, he is a guy that will try to power you over. If he can't do that, he will just again laterally attack. Move toolbox 66. Again, I said there's really nothing to evaluate here, but there is something to his power rush. There's like something off of it. Potential 86. This is a guy that could be a Pro Bowl defensive tackle if he really works at it. I'm saying a weird to Gervon Dexter because they're very similar in terms of their length, but Gervon Dexter I think is just a little bit different as pass rusher in the league and how we project that. So I'm going to say an 80.1 overall for Caleb Banks, who again is a very fun guy to look at.
Get him with a different type of protection.
Second down at 4. Winning things.
Down to our 5 or 4 last guys, we are on to the athletically gifted Zane Durant out of Penn State. He had a pretty interesting career. I don't know what it is with James Franklin. James Franklin's obsession, again, he's gone now, but obsession with getting guys that are just freak athletes. But again, it's his thing, I guess. 2022, he didn't play at all. I'm not going to lie to you guys. He wasn't really out there. 2023, solid year, but still got absolutely abused against the run. 2024 was much better than that because of the fact he was able to get off blocks and shed very efficiently. Last year, a little bit worse because he did get exposed a little bit more as a guy like that. But overall, still a solid season. I think as a pass rusher, probably his most efficient overall. Maybe not in terms of effectiveness, but I liked what I saw from him last year. He was very good laterally, and he split double teams very well. But at the same time, when a guy got up the square on him, he definitely struggled to continuously hold ground, which is, again, is something he's going to need to be able to do in the league. Games-wise, the Oregon game is the one that stands out to me the most. I'm sorry, guys, but that's a game where he got off blocks really well. But like I said, when the Oregon interior lineman, even if it wasn't even on a double team, if they were again square him up, it was very hard for him to hold his ground. And that's part of the reason, again, James was able to get some of those yards that he probably shouldn't have gotten. Other than that, though, again, he had some injury issues. That Indiana game, I think overall he played pretty solid. The pass rush, though, definitely was lacking in that Ohio State game where they got blown out, obviously. But he wasn't getting really much of anything going in that one. In terms of his actual, again, overall makeup, his strength, again, it's not awesome. I think it's still a little bit better than LT Overton, though, just overall naturally, because he's a solid athlete, but I just don't think that's going to be part of his game that's going to really be, I wouldn't say fixable, but really, again, be above average in the league. BV-ness, 65. Again, he's just not a really huge guy. You look at him, he's like, again, he's, what is he, 6'1", 294, I guess, but like, he's not a super chunky guy when you look at him. Explosion, 89. He plays fast. You're going to see that off the line. He does have, again, really a relatively elite playoff there. There's not a ton of guys that can get to that. Handwork quickness, 91. It's not, I wouldn't call it effective per se, but it is to an extent, which we'll get to in a little bit. But, yeah, he gets going pretty good. Handwork fluidness. When he punches and goes around, it's still like an awkward movement for him, but that's one he's going to be making in the league a lot. So I'm thinking if he's going to go a club move and then he's going to kind of chop down and try to get around a guy against the run, that is definitely something we want to see get better there. Handwork effectiveness, when he gets into the kitchen per se, or the like chest or shoulder area of an offensive lineman, he will just absolutely toss you. Not in terms of, again, just like actually tossing you, but he'll get around you really easily. But when he doesn't land that punch, there's kind of just a low area of, again, risk there. But when he's, again, gets that punch, and he's going to get around you. It's just going to happen. Run defense resistance, 72. I honestly don't, again, similar to LT Overton, I think it's a little bit overblown with him in terms of the concern of that. But like I said, you need to put him in the right scheme, because if you don't, that could definitely become a bigger issue. Speed, 90. Probably the fastest guy playing in this entire draft in terms of what we're going to see. He literally split a double team like it's nothing. Technique versatility, yeah, that's where it's kind of an issue, because again, there's not a lot of places you can put him where you can, again, see him to succeed as a run defender, which again is what you're gonna really need out of him to consistently be able to play him on third down. Relentlessness, 74. Again, like I said, it's a little bit untested right now because he wins pretty consistently in college. I want to see what he's able to do in terms of his actual motor in the league. Bull rush, 83, pretty solid. Finesse rush is, honestly, guys, shit. Like I said, it's that club move. Again, it's good when it hits, but it's rare where he actually, again, crosses with that chop consistently. And then you also have the speed rush. Like I said, he does have solid bend and lateral quickness for a defensive lineman. He's able to, cut off a guy, get around him, stuff like that. Kind of a ghost move of sorts. It works well. Improvisation, I'd probably give a 47. He really has 3 moves he likes to use, and again, they're kind of shaky overall. Tackling is hit or miss, so he'll probably make one, miss one. Again, the misses won't be as big of a deal, but still. Block shitting, doesn't get off blocks, probably, again, the biggest weakness of him. He doesn't get off blocks consistently enough. Move toolbox, 63. Again, 3 moves. None of them are really that diverse, and I'd like to see some variations right there, but still a 78. He's a gifted athlete, guys, so you're really going to love these guys. It's just the fact that there's only so many places you can put him with, again, seeing him as a valuable NFL player. Ed Oliver's my comparison because of, again, the very similar athletic profile and the fact they both had very similar moves out of college. The stature, and I think the really overall run defensive, again, component of this for him is definitely a little bit off of that Oliver, but I really like their pass rush makeup and their similarities as athletes. So that's why I gave that comparison. 72.3 overall, though. Not the end of the world for Zane Durant, but we need to see him become a good run defender in the league.
Straight drop. Now he's in trouble.
Kid Fish is not going to be happy with that. I think if he would not have lost yardage...
Next on top is the massive defensive tackle, Kaydan McDonald out of Ohio State, who sits at 6'3", 326, and I'm telling you, all that mass did earn him in All-American honors out of Ohio State. I think there was some little bit of favoritism, some Ohio State bias in that selection, but still, he was by far one of the top 5 defensive tackles in college football last year. He doesn't maybe project as dominant in the NFL, but there's no doubt in the fact that last year he was the run defense for the Buckeyes, and again, the games they did lose, again, part of the reason was because of the fact that he wasn't, again, as dominant as I think he was in those other games. As a sophomore, he got some really good experience as a backup player. I really think, though, behind a guy like Tyreek Williams, he learned a lot of good things, and that's part of the reason in terms of his technique improving so much in 2025. And just, again, the fact he's just that big and he's an immovable object in a lot of ways is the reason he had for the success he had last year. In terms of overall gameplay, he absolutely dominated Texas. He, I think, had, like, I'm not going to lie, guys, at least 6 plays where the play was blown up before it even started. And then ARK, who, again, looked awful in that game, his footwork got completely altered by the second play of the game with how he was moving the pocket. Again, that's just kind of how that game went. Again, these 2 games, it's kind of gross how good he was in that first half. Washington game, again, if you watched Domonique Williams, he looked like trash because of the fact that his footwork, again, it was already an issue, but, I mean, Kaydan McDonald just bull rush abused those guys. Minnesota game didn't really even need to play. I don't think he might have got like 15 snaps. Not gonna lie, guys. Illinois game dominated. Wisconsin game dominated. Penn State game, best game of his season probably. I think he had like 8 pressures, something ridiculous like that. Other than that though, kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of the game. That Indiana game, he got neutralized pretty consistently, despite the numbers not looking too bad, and that's part of the reason they really weren't as good as I think they might have wanted to be. Still only get 13 points. And obviously the quarterfinal, not really too many complaints about him in this game. Simply put, guys, he was one of the best run defender in college football last year, and that really again is what helps him. Again, the projectability of that dominance, we really don't know. But again, the first thing that comes up, he's probably the strongest guy in this entire draft. Again, he's got special strength in his mind. Again, you're not going to beat him just off of raw strength. Again, if you don't have your leverage, you're going to be cooked. BVness 90, he's a big dude and he plays big. I mean, again, there's no other way around that. Explosion, for a guy his size and a guy that doesn't exactly play fast, he gets off the line with just, again, really just, I wouldn't say the reactiveness, but a kind of an intensity that not many other guys will be looking at today really, again, display. Handwork quickness and fluidness are both not really that big of an issue for him. Again, I think he definitely, again, not playing a ton his first 2 years really helped him with this. He's definitely a little bit more raw in this, especially in his freshman year and the very little bit tape we saw out of him. But definitely a solid part of his game. His handle effectiveness is honestly elite, guys. This is probably my favorite thing about him. He has just straight up violent hands, guys. If he gets, again, when he just, again, either cross chops down or honestly swipes, it's going to be a violent movement that is going to, unless you're a really strong or really good offensive lineman, it's going to be very hard to, withstand that sort of, again, impact. Run defense resistance is 98. Again, there's really no other play you look at. And really, again, if you want to judge a guy out of this draft in terms of how good they are stopping the run, you look at Kaydan McDonald. It's on tape. It's very noticeable. Speed. He doesn't play fast. Don't know what to tell you guys. Just kind of how it is. It does hurt him as a pass rusher. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Technique versatility, 76. With him being so good against the run in such a specific really position last year, outside of, I guess, playing a little more 2-eye, it's kind of limits that, but again, you can still put him in a lot of spots just because of the fact of how good he is against the run. Relentlessness, really good, 83. The bull rush is his really only true move. Again, he has a finesse rush that is developing, which I think is really going to raise this grade up. His speed rush is lacking behind because he does not play fast. I don't really think that'll ever change, but there is something there. Improvisation, I'll give a 75. There's good things I've seen out of him, but again, he's more of a guy, again, you might even see a spin move out of him. So there's some variance there, but again, it's just not something I really see getting projected really well in the NFL. Again, his tackling special too, or block shedding, my bad. I didn't even do his tackling. I don't think we even need to do that, let's be honest, guys. We know where he's there. Block shedding, again, he gets off blocks better than anyone else in this draft. I don't even need to talk about that anymore. Again, 3 ingredients for the best, being the best run stuffer in the league. You got to be strong or big or something of that sense. You got to be, again, just an immovable object, and then you also have to be able to get off blocks really well. He's able to do all 3 of those at an elite, again, to a special level. Potential, I'm giving an 84. There's not many guys you see as true run defenders like this. That's why I say Casey Hampton, because when he was coming out of college, very similar thing. Move to a box. Who really cares because he's a run defender? 79.8 overall grade for him, though. Yeah, really solid showing here for Kaydan McDonald.
State gave up 216 on the ground in the first half alone in their loss to the Bearcats. This is Cam Michael, redshirt freshman, getting.
Next guy on slate is Domonique Orange out of Iowa State, and I got a lot. Not gonna lie, guys, I love me some Domonique Orange. He's a rare athlete, and he has a rare blend of speed and fluidness as a defensive tackle. His first 2 years at Iowa State, he really didn't get enough playing time to really see again truly what he was. 2023 without a doubt was his best year. He was kind of a rotational guy they actually put on the field a lot in those critical situations, as well as third down. But at the same time, he's not a guy that you're really going to see true volume at because of the injuries he's kind of incurred at times. But again, last year Iowa State, kind of a bizarre year. He's never been a guy that's been productive enough to really warrant, again, a blue chip sort of prospect analysis. And he's also a very flawed prospect in terms of his overall technique. But I really just like the natural fluidness he has when he's going after guards. That's all I'll say there. Again, at least in a passing down situation. For Domonique Orange, though, his numbers, again, there's not really too much to talk about here. He absolutely dominated these 4 games. The BYU game probably was the one exception, I guess. But again, he just played super well against Colorado. Arizona State, TCU games, both those tackles didn't really know what was going on. Again, when they had to switch off him with stunts. Other than that, though, again, he really didn't have a game where you really, at least statistically overall, where he really, again, just completely lit up the game. The Iowa game he played pretty well on, I guess, but it was really just fact on tape. He was just flashing off the screen. On top of that, looking at him overall, he's got, honestly, guys, really good strength. I don't know if it's to a point where you're going to really say anything else than that, but again, really strong dude. BVness, I'll give a 77. He's not again, really the makeup that we see from some of the other guys. Yeah, he's 6'4", 325, but his anchoring ability is probably the one lacking thing that for him that's not going to get this into a really good tier. But naturally, it's obviously solid. Handwork, quickness, and fluidness, that's where he's going to be he's obviously explosive. Great athlete. But yeah, handwork, quickness, and handwork, I think his fluidness should be higher than this. Honestly, guys, if I'm really looking back at this, I think I might have ticked it into the 80s. But he's just a guy, guys, that just, again, consistently has a very good blend of, again, being urgent, but at the same time, just, again, mastering it down to, again, where he needs to. And, again, that's where, again, the fluidness really comes in. Again, he's a guy that I think refines his technique more than really just trying to get it fast. And then because he's naturally fast with it is kind of where things, again, blend in there. I will say, though, with all that fluidness and prettiness in terms of his pass rush moves, his overall effectiveness against the run, I think, is a little bit limited by the fact that he's more of a, I wouldn't say a finesse guy on the interior, but not a true, I'm going to blow you up where this, again, run defense resistance come in. Because he's a guy that can be moved, again, if you do exploit his lower half. Speed, 91. He's probably, again, plays very, very fast. Again, that's just, again, because that's how he naturally is. Technique and versatility, 87. I think, again, 3 techs where I'd want to put him, but 4-eye, even 5 tech, there's some good things you can see out of him there. And even on the interior, you can trust him because of the fact that he is able to move through guys, honestly, like Swiss cheese. That's honestly how I describe it. His pass rush moves are all good enough. But, again, like I said, the finesse rush, I think, and the speed rush, just combining them overall are just very, very, again, I wouldn't say breath of fresh air for this class, to be honest with you guys. Relentlessness, it's off and on, honestly, guys, but when he's got his motor going, he's going to chase you to the sideline. Bull rush, not awesome, but it's still, again, solid enough where, again, he can kind of build off with these 2 moves. Improvisation, honestly, pretty advanced for this position, at least at this point. He doesn't tackle well. That's probably his biggest issue. That's why he doesn't produce as much. And again, I think the tape doesn't really show it. Honestly doesn't show it really that great, but he's not a really good tackler at all. It's just kind of the technique's bad. Block shedding, honestly, guys, he block sheds really, really well. He's got a 1-2 move. I wouldn't call it a swipe. I just really call it, it's a tear down, maybe coming under. Or he goes 1-2 with a scissor to get around guy. Very, very simple, but again, very effective at the same time. His move toolbox is very nice. It's just, again, not really, it's kind of vanilla. But again, for a standard interior guy, you're going to really like what you see. I like his potential to 77.9 overall. He's, again, just a really unique guy in this draft class. McKinley Jackson, or not really unique, but different. McKinley Jackson's my comparison, the guy out of for Cincinnati last year, and we saw some of that pass rush upside from him even, so we'll see what happens here. But again, really the reason the potential is limited is because I don't really know if he'll ever be a true 3-down guy that you can be a dominant player either. So, like a lot of the fluidness with him, but there's only so much you can really do with that.
Players need to feel the fire of their defensive coordinator, and he's got fire.
And now they've got a sack.
And up next is the, I won't say blue chip prospect, but preseason blue chip prospect, Peter Woods out of Clemson. Calling him polarizing would, I think, be the wrong statement for him. Again, this is the penultimate player we're going through. But yeah, his freshman season, he blasted on the scene with a dominant run defending season where he just showed his unique ability to consistently win with his second step. 2024, we even saw that to a greater extent, as that was his probably most overall productive year, and especially as a pass rusher where I think he averaged over even 2 pressures a game there. But again, last year at Clemson, I think there was definitely some disappointing things we saw in terms of him not really being able to take over games as a run defender, and not only that, his pass rush technique kind of break down as games went along. So again, those things kind of just frustrating things we saw there. In terms of specific games last year, the LSU game, he didn't play particularly great. Again, against the run, he still had a solid day. But again, as a pass rusher, definitely some limiting things in terms of, I think, pressure count. I think maybe he had 2 pressures, and one of them was off basically just an absolute blown assignment in terms of a bull rush. Troy game, he played probably his worst game of the season, in my opinion. He just, again, wasn't able to do what he wanted to be honest with you guys. Georgia Tech, Syracuse game also didn't play particularly well, so kind of a slow start to say the least for him. Again, some criticism we definitely saw from some scouts after that. But really after that, they kind of got into a groove. While the Duke game, they get 45 points to defense. That was more pointed to the fact that their linebackers really didn't play well at all in that one. And the blitzing packages they brought really didn't favor him at all. Despite that, he still got consistent pressure in that one. The Florida State game and Louisville game, not really too notable to talk about. And then obviously the Furman game, I guess he was out there. But a lot of the things we saw from Peter Woods last year were frustration, not really truly able to get through anything going throughout the entire season. But still, definitely some flashes I saw that I liked a lot. In terms of him as a prospect, he's very, I wouldn't say refined, but definitely more well-rounded than I think a lot of these other guys are overall. He's a strong dude overall. I just don't think it's something that's going to be like looked at as, again, a true strength for him. But again, definitely above average guys. Again, even on tape, despite him being what? 6'3", 315, not looking particularly huge for how he plays. I think the strength is definitely there. Beefiness, again, like I said, solid. Like, he's just a solid guy, but nothing too notable. He gets off the line faster than anyone in this draft class. I think that's really the best thing, the first thing I got to say here. Again, it's the most notable thing about him, and I think that will be his advantage in the league. Handwork quickness is an 82. He's got shorter arms. I think it's the big weakness with him here, but he strides when he gets going. Handle fluidness 59. Again, his two big moves, which are a kind of a speed rip and then a kind of pin pull swim, which I think is just it's probably the most telling thing about him. They're just not really consistently done to a level where I think I could say they're fluid. They are effective, though, which I think is important to say. But, again, the fact that, again, it's not consistent is kind of, again, brings down the overall, again, in terms of talking about efficiency, effectiveness ratio. That's where, again, kind of dips there. Run defense resistance, 82, not really much to talk about. Not going to be concerned in the league. Speed, he plays pretty fast, as you might expect him to. Very versatile guy. Again, another thing why you love him in the draft. Relentlessness. His motor's kind of there. I'm not really going to get too deep into it. But again, there's definitely some plays where I wouldn't say takes him off, but isn't giving you 100%. Bull Rush, 84. Finesse Rush, 86. This is probably the, again, reason if you think he's the best defensive tackle in the class, it's because of this. He's got two legit moves. He's got, again, a speed rip move that consistently wins. The reason I don't say it's a speed rush move is because he has just straight up, I'm going to get around you sort of, I won't say ghost move, but just, again, a bend move that he uses, which is why that's kind of the speed rush move. But again, you could call that categorized a speed rip as finesse, even though speed's in the name. His Bull Rush, though, legitimate. I wouldn't call it anything that's special. It's going to consistently win him, again, reps, but still good enough. Improvisation, 70. He hasn't really had to use it. He wins very well. Again, it truly hasn't been tested. That's why it's here. Tackling is decent enough, but he definitely, at times, definitely doesn't completely get things down. Black shedding's okay. Probably the most inconsistent part of his game, but, again, when he's on, he's doing his own thing. I gotta change that. What are we doing there? Move toolbox 73. I like what's going on there. There's definitely something of variance coming. Really, just two more developing moves there. You can either say, I don't even know, it's either in the inside counter, which I like a lot, or he's kind of working on a fake spin move too. So we'll see how that works out. But I got a 90 on the potential. Again, he's just a guy that's, I won't say advanced, but advanced guy coming out of college here. I wouldn't say it's a rarity, but the rest of the class, that's kind of what separates him. That's why it comes out to a 79.9. Might not have the same unique skill set as a guy we already talked about, but 79.9 really solid just there. Grady Jarrett's for comparison, coming out of college, very, very similar pass rush profile for both those two. And the last guy we'll be going over today before I reveal the overall rankings is Nick Barrett, a guy who's gone soaring up draft boards. He's 6'3", 312. He was a guy that honestly probably wouldn't even been drafted in the first. He was drafted at all there at South Carolina. He got very, very little playing time. 2023, we saw some good things out of him on the very little tape he got. 2024, he got injured, and it looked like his college career as a starter would definitely be either a transfer or anything. But sometimes being patient is the right move. In this past season, he got a crap ton of snaps, and he delivered as he had a very nice season. Still a flawed guy overall, but I really like the production. He showed he could be a consistent player in the again at a high level. And then really just throughout the pre-draft process, he is really, really again shot at boards. I don't want to get too high on him, but he's a guy that I really like I wouldn't say resurgence, but the rise of here. In terms of what we see with Nick Barrett, though, as a actual sequence of his games this year, he dominated that Virginia Tech game. He came out getting guns ablaze, I guess. Kyron Jones, that game, I mean, he played like really bad, but for again a South Carolina team that wasn't really on the field a lot, their defense had to play really well. He consistently went up front, and as a run defense unit there, he was the head of it. Other than that, though, I mean, there were definitely some games where he definitely was a little more quiet. Again, the LSU game, he didn't have a single pressure. He registered, I think, 3 or 4 against Oklahoma and Bama. That Bama game, for sure, he was, again, won cleanly, very consistently, which, again, very good to see. But, again, for a team that really struggled a lot, I think that his season kind of goes, again, under the radar. But solid, consistent production, that's kind of what you needed to see out of him, on top of already, again, a pretty impressive athletic profile. But for Nick Barrett, he doesn't stand out in any truly unique ways, other than, again, some things, again, you just really notice on tape. First thing you'll see is the fact that he's a pretty damn strong dude, really good to elite. I'm, again, very, I won't say generous, but very willing to award guys this if they show it on tape consistently. Beefiness, he's not a huge guy. That kind of hurt him earlier in his career, and probably the reason he wasn't on the field because they didn't think he was going to handle, again, the run really well. And again, he really didn't do it exceptionally well last year, but still, to a point, as a senior, he was able to show he could handle it enough. He doesn't get off the line fast. This is his biggest issue. He is a slow guy off the line. It is hard to win because of that, but with some of the other things you're going to see, it might not be as big of a deal. Handwork quickness. It's not quick. He doesn't play quick. He's a slow player. just going to tell you that right now. Handler fluidness, 73. It's good enough. Again, definitely a more refined guy. He played 5 years in college. You hope you get some development there. And you did. Handle effectiveness, 64. He's not a guy that's going to impact you as much off of one move. One punch isn't going to be able to win in the rep. Run defense resistance, 84. He's got a very solid lower base. I'm not saying it's going to like completely be a straight cement block, but it's going to be good enough. Speed, 63. Doesn't play fast. Already said it. Technique versatility. There's some things you can use him with. I really like him as a 1-tech or a 2-tech. There's definitely something there. Relentlessness and bull rush. The reason I put them hand in hand is because when he is going, they are both going hand in hand. They're very, like, kind of, again, emblematic of what he can be. But at the same time, he's not exactly always on. His finesse rush is really solid. It's a... How do I really describe this? Again, it's honestly a scissor move, guys. He's got a scissor move, inside, outside. It works both ways. He gets a counter off of it where he kind of just tosses a guy like a shot move. It works pretty well. Speed rush. He's got, honestly, not the worst bend, but he just doesn't really get going. That's the problem. He can't really beat a guy off even of a second step, which is an issue. Improvisation, 74. He's got some decent creativity. I'm not going to go crazy on it because, again, when your first move isn't really that great, how are you supposed to have a good second move? Tackling, 82. He's refined enough. Block shedding is really solid. Again, he has that scissor move. That's probably his best trait. Again, he uses that again to get off blocks too. Toolbox. Again, he's got 2 or 3 things that, again, work pretty well, but nothing insane. Potential, I'm going to say 74. I think he's a guy that could be a solid backup. Guy that could put out there somewhat consistently, but I don't know if he'll ever be a true starter. 72.6 overall for him. Benny Logan, a really, again, kind of grinded out guy. Again, very similar pass rush makeup. That's why I gave him that. Also as a run defender. Very similar approaches too. But yeah, Nick Barrett, he makes plays. He had a really solid season last year. It's kind of saved his draft stock. Now let's get to our overall rankings. We started things out talking about Tim Keenan, the first Alabama defensive tackle, definitely the more traditional guy. He didn't really get the true starting notes that I think you really wanted out of him, but he did a pretty damn good job for them last year. 70.9 overall grade for him. I really don't love his pass rush upside. That's kind of where he's there. Cameron Ball, 71.7. Bigger dude for sure. Nose tackle, definitely prototypically, but he has some solid bull rush capabilities, which I think will help him, influence the pocket, but there's definitely a designated role for him in the league. Up next is Christen Miller. He comes out to a 73.1. Definitely one of the more, I would say, highly touted but noticeable guys in this year's draft at this position. Definitely a solid prospect overall. Lee Hunter, now this is a guy that could really see, again, establishing himself in the starting role. That's why his is a little bit more uptick of a grade. But at the same time, there's definitely some issues that he definitely want to iron out going into the league. Darrell Jackson Jr. came out at a 71.4. He's got some issues as a pass rusher in terms of his technique, on top of the fact that his overall explosiveness, I think, is a little bit overvalued, which I think is definitely something that will be taken note of in the league. LT Overton, 74.3. Very kind of positionless player. Definitely one of the more, probably the most unique guy we talked about so far. A lot of people even see him as an edge rusher, but the explosion off the line, I think, is what kind of hinders him there. But again, the size comparison is a little bit too, but there's no denying the fact that he's a guy that's going to make plays in the league. Kale Banks, 80.1. Definitely the most, I would say rare, but even unique. I keep using unique, but he is definitely a highlight of this group here. 80.1 overall grade for him. Zane Durant, 72.3. Now, this is a guy I could really see in a hyper-specific role that could really help teams out. He's got, again, got the athleticism. He's got some of the pass rush movement. Really like that out of him. Kaydan McDonald, the most dominant run defender in this year's class, comes up to a 79.8. Again, you probably won't see him again being much higher than this in some people's class. There's definitely a ceiling to his game, but he will be a really solid run defender for years to come. Domonique Orange, he's my guy, 77.9. Rare blend of fluidness and athleticism. And again, for a guy who's been, again, touted as a very raw guy the past couple of years, he has really done a good job at silencing some of those things despite some production woes. Peter Wood, 79.9. He's, again, the consensus guy in this year's draft in terms of what we've seen over time, but overall, he's a very refined guy, and he'll definitely give you some solid starting time in the NFL. Nick Barrett, again, definitely the highest riser here, 72.6. The production we saw, again, just talked about him last year. Again, guy that could be a capable player in the league. And now our overall rankings. Kale Banks is my #1 defensive tackle at 80.1. Tim Keenan comes out to a 70.9. We got everyone else in the middle. Probably the biggest surprising thing for a lot of people would be Zane Durant being this low. Some people have him higher. Even our Christen Miller a little bit higher too. But those are my top 12 defensive tackles in this year's draft. Even you could say Domonique Orange being a little bit high. But hope you guys enjoyed this. You'll have plenty of more, again, 2026 NFL draft featured rankings where I will be giving you guys the top whatever amount, depending on how, again, strong the position is in this year's draft. I'll be giving you guys my top whatever number for each position. But other than that, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys for the offensive line sometime in the future. But we obviously have some bigger fish to fry before that. Most notably, we got a mock draft to get to on Saturday. But other than that, those are your big boys on the defensive side of the ball.
At that Patrick Mahomes type level right now this season.